people don't really understand the importance of closure, or like what it actually means to have closure from something, from a relationship or from a certain situation. Because I feel like people think that like when something is just over or you're separated from someone, it's over and done with. But they don't understand that because there's no closure, there's emotions that are lingering around, like good or bad emotions, and then they just resurface randomly. So say you're in a relationship and you two separate, you can think that it's over and okay, the relationship's over, it didn't work, whatever the case. And then months later or even years later, you're in a different relationship or considering being with someone, and certain emotions resurface. And those emotions are there because there was never actual closure. So it's like a lot of people don't understand the importance of it. In order to have closure, you actually have to come to like an acceptance of what happened in that relationship. Even if it didn't go the way you wanted it to, even if you were the one that wanted to end the relationship, you have to you have to make sure that you've accepted that this relationship didn't work out and it served its purpose for the moment, and that's it. When you accept the way that the relationship turned out and accept whatever that other person did to you or whatever you did, then you have closure. Then you don't have those lingering thoughts, and then you don't have those emotions that you carry over to different relationships. Because that's the problem. When you don't have closure, at some point you're going to bring basically your baggage of emotions into your next relationship. Whether you realize it or not, it's coming from your previous relationships. So that is why closure is extremely important. Like you'll have these reoccurring thoughts, right? Like say for example, you've broken up, right? You ended a relationship, and then let's say like a year or two later, you will have certain thoughts either of your ex, and that's because of that previous relationship that you never really accepted the way that it went. You never really accepted it, and because you never really accepted it, there's still an emotion there. That's why like that the drama that comes from your exes, that's part of not having closure. That has a lot to do with it, because when you have closure, it's almost like, I don't want to say you don't care about them, but you're okay with how things are and you've accepted it. Whether you feel hurt or not, you've accepted whatever the turnout was. So closure is extremely important for you to move forward, not only with your life, but to move forward into the next relationship. When you don't have closure, you're cheating yourself and your future partners, because it's like you're holding back a certain part and you're bringing in previous baggage of emotions that your future relationships, they have nothing to do. Like it's not their fault of whatever you went through or whatever you experienced. So when you don't have closure, you have to understand you're not only affecting yourself, you're affecting a possible relationship that you can be in. For example, you end a relationship because you feel like your ex-girlfriend did not appreciate the things that you did for her. She didn't appreciate you enough, and turned out she left you because she found another person, right? So you're left feeling hurt. And if you don't have closure, now the next relationship, or it could be that a female wants to be with you, and because you're holding on to those emotions and that hurt from your previous relationship that you never had closure with, you're gonna think this female is going to do the same thing, or you're just gonna label all females to be unappreciative, and a female is gonna cheat, this is what females do, all because you never had closure and you never dealt with those emotions from your previous relationship. So that's just a minor example. Like you can be affected to the point where you don't even realize that it's coming from your previous relationships. And you have to understand, emotions and perspectives, they come from somewhere. So you need to understand that if there is no closure, it's going to affect you. It can be in the short run or the long run. You may not even think about the exact person that caused this emotion, but you will just feel that emotion. And that emotion is only there because you've never dealt with it and you never had closure. So understand, in order to move forward, you need closure. You don't go from one relationship, one pain, one emotion, and jump into another and think that it's okay. It might feel okay at the moment because you're vulnerable, but you have to understand it's not going to completely work itself out, and there's going to be trouble because you need closure. You have to understand that closure is extremely important. So how do you get closure? After a relationship, how do you find closure? So let's take, for example, your relationship ended and you're the one that's feeling hurt, right? So I feel like you need to take time. It's different for everybody because everybody handles their emotions differently. So it's not like you can just say, hey, take a month and then you'll be able to face it. Whatever went on in your relationship, however you handle your emotions, that's going to determine how long it takes for you to be able to deal with whatever you have to deal with. So whenever you feel ready and prepared to actually take the pain and put it aside and actually look at the situation, look at the relationship, and accept and be truthful as to what didn't work out and why it didn't work out. I feel like the best type of closure would be if you could actually communicate with one another and verbalize, this is why I feel like this relationship didn't work out. But everybody can't do that. For whatever reason, every relationship has its problems, and some situations, they just don't leave room for you to be able to sit down and actually speak to the other person. But I feel like that is the best way because it's like, it's straight up a way for you to understand what you did wrong and to verbalize what you felt the other person did wrong or what just wasn't enough for you. Because you can make assumptions, but to have someone tell you, this is why it didn't work out. And then you can assess and say, okay, I need to work on this. Or just say, this is who I am and it just didn't work for them. But if you can't have that type of conversation, you have to honestly just sit and be truthful to yourself. And you can't just sit here and put the blame on the other person, because you have to understand this relationship consisted of you and someone else. So just as they took part in the relationship, so did you. So you can't just say I did nothing wrong in there. Even if you feel like you were just being you, fine, but there was something that it didn't click with the other person. So you have to be truthful with yourself. And once you understand and assess the entire relationship and what it did for you, what it didn't do for you, then from there you can just accept this is what it was. And that's just the way that it was. And it didn't benefit. There's no need to be in a relationship where you're lacking something. And there's no need for you to force someone to be in a relationship with you knowing that you're lacking what they need. Because you're never going to be completely happy. If you're not happy, they can't be happy. And if they're not happy, there's no way you're going to completely be happy. So you have to just come to terms and be real with yourself and just accept that. Once you accept whatever happened in your relationship, you can move forward. And that's how you get closure. So for example, you can understand, like I mentioned before, when there's closure and when there's not closure, because you're going to bring into your next relationship situations, emotions from your previous relationships. So my marriage, for example, right? I'm going on 10 years, and my husband has had previous relationships that have left him hurt and have not worked out for him, obviously, right? But I know that he has had closure on his end. And what allows me to know that and believe that is I know he doesn't do things like, for example, comparing me to his previous relationships. He doesn't look for drama with his previous relationships. He's not constantly, like, how can I say, he's not assuming that I would do certain things, that I would act a certain way. He's not thinking that I'm going to betray him. He's not calling me out of my name. Like, those are things that you can tell that's coming from something that happened in your past. Just like you can tell when you're dealing with a scorned individual by the way that they act. So with my husband, on his end, it's very clear to me that he's not holding on to any emotion from his past relationship. The only thing he has held on to is his growth and what he has learned as far as females and how to treat them. But it's not like he's bringing in his emotional baggage, and he didn't bring that into our marriage. The same thing with me. The reason we were able to kind of get into our relationship, a lot of people would say it was like pretty fast, got serious pretty fast, is because we both were not emotionally prepared. Like, we weren't holding on to baggage. So those are, thank you, have a nice day. Those are things that's how you know that you're prepared to be in another relationship, because you're not holding on to any situations from the past. You're not bringing drama or, things of that nature. So when you actually are able to have closure and accept whatever happened, that's how you're going to be able to move forward, like, and be in a healthy relationship. But it's so important for you to just keep it real with yourself and truly accept whatever happened in that relationship. You have to accept what happened, even if you're the one that messed up. Like, it could be that you cheated, you lied constantly. It can be that. As long as you accept and own up to your wrongdoing, you're able to move forward, because now in your next relationship, you're going to know what you should and should not do. You're going to learn from it. Like, that's the point of life. You learn from whatever it is that you do. So whatever it is, you just have to be truthful with yourself. And even if closure to you means reaching out to that person and apologizing, that could be closure for you, and you're content. You can accept whether they accept your apology or not. If you feel like closure to you is saying, I apologize for the way that I treated you, I apologize for cheating on you, I apologize for X, X, and X. If that's going to bring closure for you, just do it. Whether they ignore you, whether they accept your apology, whether they decide not to and still have hate towards you, as long as you feel okay with that, if you can find closure with that, then do it. But for the most part, like I said, a lot of people can't have those conversations. So for a lot of us, closure is done on your own. So you just have to understand that you just have to keep it real with yourself so that you can accept. You can't, once you sit and start dwelling on this is how it should have been, it would have worked out if I did this or if they did that, you're not going to find closure like that, because you're still stuck living in that past, in that relationship. And you have to understand that it's over, so now it's time to move on. Even if there's hope in your mind that you guys may get back together, you still have to find closure in whatever it is that caused you guys to break up. You have to find closure in that and accept whatever happened so that you can move forward. So I think that's like the best way to go about finding closure and actually getting closure. I mentioned before, that's why you have exes that bring a lot of drama. When you have an ex that is causing drama, it's because there's no closure. Because if there's closure, it's almost like, think back to your very first relationship, right? You don't really think about them. And if you do, it's not like jealousy or like, let me see what they're doing, let me start problems. You don't, because it's like, it's not that you don't care about them, it's just that relationship like came and went. You know what I'm saying? But when you have an ex that's causing drama, believe that there's no closure. And you have to understand that closure you can be prevented from having closure because you hate the person, you hate them for hurting you, or you're still in love with them. You still want to be with them. You can't accept that they moved on. So it can go either way. But whatever the case is, in order to find closure, you have to accept whatever occurred, and that's it, move forward. So if you don't have closure, like I mentioned before, when you don't have closure, you're going into your new relationships and it's like you're not really giving 100% yourself, because you're going to do a lot of like, it's like you're gonna have a certain guard up. So if in your previous relationship you were cheated on, you were lied to, you're going to go into future relationships with a guard up, thinking that you're going to be lied to and cheated on. So it's going to affect you and your partners. So understand that closure is extremely important, and without closure, you're cheating yourself, you're cheating your future relationships. You just need to understand how important closure is. Okay. So that being said, closure is extremely necessary. It's important to have closure. You need to find closure. Somehow, some way, find closure. No matter how long it takes, no matter how short it takes. It may take you a month. It may take you a couple of days. But be real with yourself. Like, don't just say, okay, I'm not thinking about them, I have closure. No, you have to really address the situation. And on a spiritual level, like, you can have thoughts. Say, for example, you have lingering thoughts about your previous relationships. You need to understand that your spirit, right, as much as you try to front, your spirit, there are things that, like, they come into your energy field and they affect your health. So you need to understand that your spirit will try to communicate with you somehow. So when you have lingering thoughts, you have to sit down and really think. Just because, like I mentioned before, you might hold on to emotional baggage, but you're not connecting the person that caused this emotional pain, right? So you have to understand, if you have these lingering thoughts, you need to sit down and take time to assess whatever it was that occurred, because there's something that your spirit wants you to face from your previous relationship. So a lot of people, they'll jump up and they're like, oh my God, I can't stop thinking about my ex and I don't know why, I miss them. So now you fool yourself to think this is why you're thinking about them. You have to understand, from a spiritual level, there might be something there that you never really dealt with. You never fully found closure. So you also have to pay attention to that, because your spirit knows, and your spirit just knows what it needs to be at peace and to function at a higher frequency and have no emotional baggage that is going to cause harm and hurt and illness to you. So that's another thing that you have to pay attention to. Don't just front and you tell yourself, well, I'm good, I'm dating, I'm not worried about them, I'm not thinking about them. You truly have to face whatever it was that happened, because you have to understand, any little thing can affect you, and you'll carry that on, and then you'll start getting these new perceptions about how females are or how males are based on your previous experiences.